stop the live stream and then I'm going to start it again. So that well, no, we could do it. Okay, here we go. We're actually going to do the tafsir right now. All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Namil is actually one of those surahs that contained a number of different stories, but stories that weren't mentioned, especially with Sulaiman alayhi salam. All right, so when we look at Surah Namil, we could see that it starts with طاسين تلك آيات القرآن وكتاب مبين. I talked about the huruf al-muqatta'a, these different letters that come in separate. We said there are 28 different opinions regarding the meaning of these letters. Are they to mean the names of Allah Almighty if combined, or the names of the Prophet ﷺ if combined, or are they to bring attention, or are they to say, well, this is what forms the Quran that you're actually hearing? So those are the most famous different interpretations. تلك آيات القرآن وكتاب مبين. So those the letters are actually, or even the words that you're hearing are basically, those are the verses. The word ayah doesn't actually mean verse. The word ayah actually means miracle. So ayat, those miracles, meaning it's talking about the ayat, the verses of the Quran, really. But how many verses do we actually have in the Quran? We have 6,236 different verses and 114 surahs. So those are the words of the Quran, وَكِتَابٍ مُبِينٍ. But is it the same? The wa doesn't always mean that it is for an alternate thing. The wa can also mean, and it also includes such and such. So this is just to clarify that wa right there. So those are the ayat of the Quran. Those are the verses. Those are the miracles of the Quran. And they contain, that book contains clarification. What kitab mubin. So it doesn't always mean the, well, like I mentioned, difference. So what else does it contain? So kitab mubin, it also contains guidance. Wa bushra lil mu'minin. It contains guidance. What is guidance? So guidance actually means guidance in faith and guidance in what the implication of faith actually means, which really relates to people's actions. So what does it mean? Like if you look at, for example, atheism, all right, atheism, yes, it will talk about, trying to prove that God doesn't exist, and therefore they'll have their own understanding of Genesis and that the world started, in the cell and all these different things in space and whatever, regardless, in the evolution and all that stuff. But in the end, is that the implication of that whole idea is really when it comes to the philosophy of ethics. So what do you mean, and what is the application? How do you apply your no faith in God? How do you apply it on ground? Well, that's where, to apply it on ground actually means there's no good and evil. It's all matter in motion. So therefore, what you decide is good, and what you decide is wrong, it just means so, but there's no accountability to our actions. There's no accountability to our actions. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the other hand, is responding to all the different ideologies that are out there in terms of one, aqidah. Now, whenever you want to see huda, whenever you want to see amanu, you're going to see the word amilu salihat, because there are two things that relate to what it means to be guidance. And the first one is really the thought that you carry. Number two, the implication in terms of action. So huda is really that guidance in terms of faith. And then bushra lil mu'mineen, it actually involves, it's going to be, remember, amanu wa amilu salihat. So here's the amanu segment of it. So it's a huda, it's a guidance for those that have the faith, and bushra lil mu'mineen. And as for that act upon the faith, those are the people that are going to be getting the glad tidings. A bushra is really to bring in good news. So when you look at that ayah, huda wa bushra, it's actually containing right there for those that acted upon the faith, they're getting guidance. for those that acted upon the faith and put it in practice, those would be the ones to get the glad tidings, that is. All right. الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. So now it wanted to explain, well, what do you mean by acted upon the faith? So now it went in explaining the details of what really it means to be acting upon the faith, what it really means to be a believer. And it's first started out with الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ, those that يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. The word يُقِيم الصَّلَاةَ actually means to perform salah. But the word يُقيم is more than just performing something. That's why we would say قَامَ, to stand. And we would say يَقُومُ, etc. So what is يُقِيمُونَ? They're regular in their performance. They're doing it with complete faith. They're doing it with complete sincerity. So there's yuqimuna. So it's not qama lis-salah, it's actually yuqimu lis-salah. So he's putting himself upright in every direction, in his sincerity, in his standing up straight, in his direction, in the way he faces things, in the way that he thinks about the salah, etc. In other words, he is inside and outside really consistent with wanting to do the prayer. Now, the word salah, of course, the waw right there is actually not to be read. It's silent, but there are differences of opinions when we're talking about salah. Why is that waw right there? Is it to differentiate it from something else, or is it something that has to do with Lugha Arabiya, and where salwata was the original word, and then later it became shortened as salah. Regardless, the word salah actually means prayer, but the word salah can also mean any prayer. So right now we're sitting together and I'm going to make a prayer that you would get the highest grades in the whole university. All right. So this is a salah. This is a prayer. All right. So, but yuqimuna salah was actually put in a particularization by the hadith that it actually refers a particular salah, which is what we perform the 5 daily prayers. وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ, the word yu'ti in the Quran, it actually came in 2 things. إِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى and إِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ. Ita actually means to give without waiting for anything in return. So you give zakah, but you're not waiting for anything in response. You're donating it. That's it. You're just giving that. And same thing when it actually talked about ita'i dhil qurba. Ita'i dhil qurba, you're really giving to your relatives, but you're not waiting for anything in response. In fact, you might not even get anything in response.
Yeah, isn't it like sadaqah? Or
it's like sadaqah, yeah. Absolutely. But I'm talking about the word ita. I'm emphasizing the word ita. Ita is zakah. The word zakah actually means to purify. You're purifying. So why is it purifying? But I'm trying to give something anyways. So why is it purifying? Well, it's purifying you in 2 ways. The first way in purifying with zakah is that for sure, the money that you had made may contain some of the energy that you put in that might not have been fully to perform that particular task. So you're taking out by, it's kind of like you've got all this that belongs to you, but there must be some energy put in that you got paid for it, and it really is not to be really yours, because there's some energy that went, not you putting in that energy. You didn't put it in where something that you deserve to get paid for. So the Quran is teaching, well, you got to learn that when it comes to money, it's really rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're purifying yourself, and you're purifying how you perceive rizq, and you're purifying the energy that you put in is not necessarily what makes the money, but it's actually rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're learning how to go beyond this cause and effect type of understanding to actually learn that rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. and you're purifying your money, and you're from the energy that went in not paying back and bring in the money, and also that thinking, to purify your thinking, that don't think that energy is what brought the money. It's not the energy that brought you the money. It's actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gave you the money. So there's that one side. You're number 3, you're purifying yourself with giving zakat, in where you're connecting yourself to the principle rather than connecting yourself with the money. So you're trying to connect yourself that giving is actually a higher principle than taking. Even though you took money for the service that you had put in, you took money for the effort, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching you that live up to the principle to give, rather than thinking that you have to take for every single service. You're purifying yourself by purifying the way you view yourself, in where you had done lots of service, therefore you have actually gotten the money for the service and the effort that you put in. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching you, don't connect your rizq with your power and with yourself, but connect rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So give that money to connect yourself with the principle of the Lord Almighty, who gave you rizq, not because of the effort that you put in, but the Lord Almighty gave you rizq from His bounty. All right? So you are technically تتخلق بأخلاق الله سبحانه وتعالى. You're learning from the manners of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in where He would give without you even doing an effort. So you would give the muhtajin, you would give the needy and the indigents, you would give them because that's a higher principle than waiting for somebody to give you something in response. Got it? All right, so let's continue. وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. So وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. So we've got the different tenets of faith. Number 1, الصلاة. 2 is zakah, and 3 الآخرة, the faith in الآخرة. Of course, as in the hadith in Jibreel. بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. The word yaqeen actually means to believe with no doubt. To believe with no doubt, in where you are in such great belief that you do not have not even the smallest amount of skepticism. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ زَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَعْمَالَهُم. So on the other hand, this is for the people that believe. What about the other people? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ. As for those that don't believe in Judgment Day. So what happened? Well, it didn't say those that don't perform salah and those that don't perform zakat, right? It didn't say any of that. And the reason why is really because it wanted to say that just like what the basis of your understanding of life is really going to affect your behavior, right? So here it said, well, guess what happened? Those that don't have the huda, it's flipping it around, all right? So it's actually telling you, wait a minute, those that, just like the people that have huda, the result in action was this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, well, the people on the other hand that don't have huda, the result of their action is this. Let's see what the result of their action for not having huda is. زَيَّنَّا لَهُمْ أَعْمَالَهُم. So the first thing, زَيَّنَّا. زَيَّنَّا means to beautify. What happened? Beautify what? Beautify their action. So what does it mean to beautify their action? They would see their action, there's that egocentrism, they would see their action as beautiful. They would see it based on pleasure. They would see it based on ego. They would see it feeding themselves, their pleasures, and they would see it as beautiful. فَهُمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. It didn't say that they're blind, but it said their insight is blind. The difference between ama and amah is that ama is that you're literally blind in eyesight, but the amah means you're blind in insight. Got it?
Yeah.
blind in insight. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, well, for those that don't believe in the akhirah, the implication is they're going to be living based on existentialism. They're going to create a new understanding of what makes a good action and what makes a behavior, any behavior as right or wrong, is really based on their own pleasures. And then they're going to put in the narrative to make it seem it's a right thing to do, to make it seem that, well, I'm feeling that it's making me feel the pleasure, therefore it is good. It's bringing me the benefit, it's bringing me the money, it's bringing me what I need in this life, maybe fame, maybe money, maybe a house, etc. Therefore, it is better. Therefore, it should be good. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَهُمْ يَعْمَهُونَ, that their insight is actually blinded from actually seeing the things based on what they truly are, not based on materialism, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that their insight is blind from seeing beyond the surface of what appears to be right. أولئك لهم سوء العذاب. Those are the people that will have سوء العذاب, the worst of the punishment. So why the worst of the punishment? Well, they decided to live their life just based on of course their own pleasure. So in the end is that, well, they decided, they chose to stay away from al-akhirah. They chose to stay away from haqq. So therefore, وَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ هُمُ الْأَخْسَرُونَ. Now they're going to be the worst of those that will be losing. وَإِنَّكَ لَتُلَقَّى الْقُرْآنِ. We're going to get into the stories now, the real fun stories. وَإِنَّكَ لَتُلَقَّى الْقُرْآنِ. And that you are receiving. لَتُلَقَّى actually means you're, yeah, you need to go. It's okay. La tulaqqa al-Quran means you're receiving it. You're receiving it. And what is it? It's al-Quran. Min ladun hakimin alim. From a hakim. Hakim means most wise. Alim actually means the most knowledgeable. So most knowledgeable and most wise. Now here then it says, إذ means, and remember, إذ قال موسى لأهله. And when Musa said to his family, but the word ahlihi doesn't mean family per se, it actually means his wife. Inni anastu nara. He said, I, here, anastu. The word anastu actually means, it's like I'm getting that sense, I'm getting a feeling, I'm getting like a slight ability to see something. Nara, I'm able to see a fire from far away. سآتيكم منها. I will go to it and bring from there. Now, when you see fire in the wilderness, you're going to assume that fire was lit by somebody. Somebody is going to have some information on probably where to go. And somebody is going to also probably give us some burning coal or fire to be able to get some burning fire to probably get some warmth. فَلَمَّا جاءها. I want you to look at this one. It's, this is really important to see in where the responsibility of a man is really to keep that one security. And that's why he said, سآتيكم منها بخبر. It's a man's responsibility to make sure that the family is secure, to make sure that the circumstances are safe for the family. And وآتيكم بشهاب قبس لعلكم تصطلون. And it was the man's responsibility to make sure that the home is warm, that the home is secure for everyone in the family, secure and also warm, and something that the rest of the family endures. The other day I was asked about rujula. He said, what is rujula? What makes manhood? On the top of the different the different descriptions of manhood is that the man understands that what it means to be responsible, what it means to keep everyone secure, even if it meant putting himself in danger. He could have put himself in danger. He's not really sure who's there, but despite that, he actually went to see what's going on and what information he can get. Or also, manhood is to make sure that everyone is feeling not only secure, that's the basis of life, but even to make sure that everyone in the family is feeling the warmth and is feeling what makes them comfortable. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهَا. It's so sad right now, manhood lost in our younger generation of men, and each one is unfortunately, and right now, even not sure about their manhood. And if you're not sure about manhood, you could easily take all those injections to make yourself into a woman, and it's embarrassing. Allah al-Musta'an. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهَا. So فَلَمَّا جَاءَهَا. When he came to, what is جَاءَهَا? It's actually referring to the nar. When he came to the fire, he was called on. That blessed is the one that is right, man finnar, like those that are in that fire, like in that fire that was lit over there, and those that are around it, from the malaika and those. Wa subhanallah, and there's no one like unto the Lord Almighty, the Lord of the worlds. Ya Musa, it is a grand call. O Musa, direct call. From who? Innahu ana Allah. It is I, your Lord, Al-Aziz, the most mighty and the most wise. Throw your وَأَلْقِ عَصَاكَ. Throw your cane. And when he sees it, that is the cane, he sees it moving and trembling as if it was a jinn, as if it was a jan. وَلَّا مُدْبِرًا وَلَمْ يُعَقِّبْ. He continued and scurried and hurried away, did not even look back. O Musa, again the Lord Almighty calls on to Prophet Musa again. Do not be afraid. Prophets are never afraid. إِنِّي لَا يَخَافُ لَدَيَّ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. My prophets and my messengers do not fear. Do not fear. It's in order to say, this is now you're at a different level. And that's why in another, in Surah Al-Shu'ara, Prophet Musa alayhi salam is taught, even in those moments when you're afraid, be sure. And when the people that were with him that ran away, that ran to Palestine and ran away from the Pharaoh, and they said, they're about to catch us. They're about to get to us. And he said, Kalla, inna ma'iya rabbi sayahdin. He learned the lesson from this moment that no, verily not, the Lord Almighty is with me. And here, inni la yakhafu ladayya al-mursalun. Prophet Musa alayhi salam learned, you can't know fear. You've got a message. You've got a mission right there. Who fears? Illa man zalam. Only the ones that had transgressed the limit and those that had changed the good and then بعد سوء, and then they had changed بعد سوء فإني غفور رحيم. In other words, those that transgressed and then they changed all the evil that they had done, they had changed it into being good, then the Lord Almighty is most forgiving and most merciful. Now, time to train Musa alayhi salam. What is the training going to be? Put your hand and insert your hand inside your bosom. Your bosom, it's not a pocket, but it's bosom. It's like in between the chest. And what is going to happen? تخرج. Your hand will come out white and bright with no harm, meaning no illness. In 9 different miracles to Fir'aun and his people, but The people of Fir'aun and his people, or Fir'aun and his people, were people of fisq. The word fisq actually means to peel off the peel from a plant, from a fruit. So what happened? There's the fruit, the actual fruit, and there's the peel. In other words, they exacerbated themselves away from truth. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَوْمًا فَاسِقِينَ. They're people that exacerbated themselves away from truth. فَلَمَّا جَاءَتْهُمْ, and when the signs, when the miracles had come to the Pharaoh with clear, to the point that they could actually see it, as if they could see it with their own eyes, all the different evidence, all the different miracles, all the different signs were clear, they just said, this is clear magic. Why did they describe it as magic? Because they were able to see that it was something supernatural. They were able to see that there was something beyond human capacity, but they wanted to attribute it to magic because they wanted to attribute it, the one behind these miracles is nothing but an evil spirit and not the Lord Almighty. And then the ayah continues, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا, and clarified that they actually turned away. They totally, the word jahadu means that they were so hard-hearted that they actually refused it and rejected it with full hard-heartedness. Even though that deep on the inside, they were so sure of it that it was from the Lord Almighty. But the reason why they rejected those words is really ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا. It is really because they wanted to transgress the limit. What limit? They wanted to transgress the limit of principle and actually do as their desires motivate them to do. وَعُلُوًّا. And it was all about arrogance. They knew what the truth was, but it was just arrogance. فَانظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. Now look at the result of, for those that have gone beyond the limit. What does it mean to go beyond the limit? The word mufsid actually means to destruct. How did they destruct? Well, they destructed by committing transgression and oppression. They also destructed by acting in arrogance. When you have dhulm and you have ulu, that is definitely what is going to bring injustice. This injustice that was caused there, Fir'aun, and I want you to focus on that one. The other day, we have a scammer in our community. This scammer, he's, in an image of a sheikh, huge beard, and he talks in the masajid and gives khutbahs and etc. But he's right now actually caught with scamming for more than $4 million. My dad the other day, I was talking to him and I was telling him about the story and how and where we left off with the story. And he said, I don't understand why we're starting to see so many sheikhs that are scammers, so many scholars, so many people that are religious are scammers. I said, no, it's not that the religious people are scammers, it's that the scammers would put on a religious appearance, just like Fir'aun. Fir'aun, when he wanted to manipulate the masses, Fir'aun didn't say that he was a king that was concerned about his ruling, and that was concerned about his authority. He actually put on an image that he was the most patriotic and person, and he was concerned about principle, and that's why he just yelled out and he said, "Inni akhafu an yubaddila dinakum." I fear that he might change your principle and change the identity and change the religion and change all those different civilizations that we had built. In other words, the ideas that make our civilization what it is. I fear that he might actually change your religion and the principles that you stand on. Who's speaking here? It's Fir'aun. What did he say? I fear that he might change your religion and he might actually commit injustices. Fir'aun is speaking about injustice, the one that killed babies in order to protect his own governance, is now speaking of justice, is now speaking as if he was the man that was bringing people their rights. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another surah says, فَاسْتَخَفَّ قَوْمَهُ فَأَطَاعُوهُ. فَاسْتَخَفَّ قَوْمَهُ. He knew that there's people were people of dishonor, and they just obeyed him. They believed the narrative that was put forward. And that's exactly the same in where if you look at the ayat before, let's go back to it really quick. You look at the ayat before, it was actually saying right there, زَيَّنَّا لَهُمْ أَعْمَالَهُمْ. زَيَّنَّا لَهُمْ أَعْمَالَهُم. It was all put in a form of narrative to make things seem as if they really contained truth. In order to manipulate the masses, even if it's a scammer, they were going to appear in a religious appearance and not in an appearance of scammers. Because if they would appear in the Assalamu alaikum. So no scammer is going to put an image of the real self, their real image. That's why they have to put in an image of integrity. Because if they were to reveal the reality of who they really are, no one is going to believe them. So they have to appear as if they were doing it for your sake, as if it is actually for your benefit and not for their benefit, and as if it was living up to the principles. So they have to put in this image. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَانظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. And see, these people that are not acting based on akhlaq, not based on justice. Why were they not acting based on justice? Because they were not even finding the huda. Because huda brings in the justice. You can't speak about justice if you don't actually have the epistemology, the foundation of what makes justice. Most of the times we see people talking about justice and then forgetting that what brings justice is actually guidance. You can't talk about justice without talking about what makes justice, which is guidance. That's why the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ talked about was really La ilaha illallah. In fact, he told the Sayyidah Aysha, if the first thing I was going to tell your people if the first thing I was going to tell your people, do not commit zina, do not drink, the people would have said that we're not going to leave zina and we're not going to leave drinking. But he was supposed to be working on the foundation of what makes justice, to understand that this whole world was created by the Lord Almighty and that the Lord Almighty is the only one that has the right to issue the definition of justice. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ عِلْمًا. Now, remember, what makes justice? Well, what makes justice is huda. So that's why the munasaba, or the reason why it went from one story to another, but slightly different. So they're supposed to have some connections. Prophet Sulaiman and also Prophet Musa alayhi salam were mentioned here, these stories that, in other words, they're supposed to have some connection, they're supposed to have some similarities. So let's see what the similarity and what the differences are. So وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ, and we had granted Dawood and Sulaiman ilma, knowledge. Wait a minute. What is knowledge supposed to do with everything, with anything? Well, knowledge is basically the foundation of justice. When you speak about justice, you can't talk about justice without talking about power. Power is the ability to implement justice, to enforce justice. You don't see police officers carrying perfume and chocolates and gifts. but you see them carrying guns, grenades, pepper spray, all these different things that definitely mean power. There's no way that you can inform and implement justice without having power that is supposed to be protecting those that go beyond the limit of justice, to actually give them this discipline to get on track. And here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, comparing, let's see, Prophet Musa alayhi salam did not have the power. In fact, he was even afraid from a moving snake. From a moving snake, of course, it was a cane. Yes, it was not just any snake. In fact, Prophet Musa alayhi salam had many fears in his life. Let's see, the first fear, his own mother was, before even his birth, was afraid. Everyone was living in fear. His own mother was living in fear. His own mother throws him in fear. Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts him in the place where there is actually the most fear, in the Pharaoh's palace. Prophet Musa alayhi salam runs away from this palace because he didn't intend to kill him, but he just فَوَكَزَهُ مُوسَى فَقَضَى عَلَيْهِ. He just gave him more of a pat, and the man drops dead. فَوَكَزَهُ مُوسَى فَقَضَى عَلَيْهِ. He just drops dead. Prophet Musa really just patted him. The word says فَوَكَزَهُ. He just gave him a pat, and the man just drops dead. فَقَضَى عَلَيْهِ. Again, Prophet Musa alayhi salam goes into another fear, running away from the Pharaoh and running away from the Pharaoh's soldiers. Prophet Musa alayhi salam goes into the land of Madian. The land of Madian, he's really not sure what to find. He's not really sure what's going on. But then he gives these girls the protection. These girls go tell their dad that this man is qawiyun amin, that this man is strong and a man of integrity, a man of amana, trustworthy. That's what makes manhood. For those that, when you want to speak of manhood, look at Prophet Musa alayhi salam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inni la yakhafu ladayya al-mursalun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, what did he say? سَآتِيكُم مِّنْهَا بِخَبَرٍ. I'm, trying to give you security and responsibility. And Prophet Musa alayhi salam, having ghayra, having that jealousy as well. And where, ladies, you stay here, telling his wife he doesn't want any man seeing her. And then, of course, that ghayra again coming in, even when Prophet Musa alayhi salam, was of course, the Mufassirin actually say that they were actually going through the night, not through the day, which is why he was capable of seeing the fire, because it was nighttime, it wasn't in the daytime. And you could see that jealousy, you could see that security, that responsibility, you could see qawi, amin, you could see a man that is strong, a man that is trustworthy, a man that is holding on to the legacy of the Lord Almighty, that even when he really goes into a political fear, or at least the circumstances require a political fear. Musa then learned when they said, Inna la mudrakun. When the people of Musa alayhi salam, they said, Inna la mudrakun. That's it. They're going to catch us. They're about to catch us. They're really close to catching us. Prophet Musa alayhi salam yells out and said, Kalla inna ma'iya rabbi sayahdeen. By Allah, verily not, absolutely not. The Lord Almighty is with us. He will guide us to the right path. And of course, all the circumstances were actually revealing that they're going to be caught. They're going to get prosecuted. But then Prophet Musa alayhi salam had learned the lesson. No, Allah is with me. I'm not in danger. Now here, Prophet Musa alayhi salam was implementing. He brought those evidences. He was bringing in a different power to a person that already has power. But let's say when it came to another authority, Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam was totally different. Let's just go over the story and see it, okay? Let's move on. So, آتينا داود وسليمان علما. Prophet Dawood and Sulaiman, they were granted ilm. What is the ilm supposed to be? Well, it was based on hidayah, of course, because they were prophets. And not only hidayah, but they were actually having the power to implement justice. Well, power and the ability to implement justice, to maintain power, to maintain any type of a blessing that you have, it actually needs dhikr, that you would see that it's actually from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what Prophet Dawood and Sulaiman were actually doing. What were they doing? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said they had the ilm, and part of the first ilm is that they recognized that this power, that this authority is actually from the Lord Almighty. And they would say, sing the song of hidayah, sing the song of dhikr. And they would say, praise all to Allah Almighty, who had blessed us and favored us over a lot of his believing servants. In other words, they didn't say bless us over all the rest of the people, but they said believing servants. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made this blessing actually be inherited to Prophet Sulaiman later. So Prophet Sulaiman inherited his father Dawood. وقال يا أيها الناس علمنا منطق الطير. Now, it was a moment where Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam was clarifying to the people that he was governing that his governance went beyond than any other governance that had ever happened in history. So he said, oh people, we were actually taught the conversation and bird language, and we were given all the power. We were given all the power. إن هذا لهو الفضل المبين. This is indeed the best and the clear favor, the clear and the manifest like blessing that anybody could have. وحشر لسليمان. What happened? So Prophet Sulaiman said, we're able to talk to birds. Our authority expands far beyond anything. Now, وحشر لسليمان جنوده. So a whole military, right there, they were doing this military march or military display right there. And the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam brings in the different soldiers. It was time to bring in the army. The army was there of jinn, humans, and even birds. What were they? Yuzaun. They were in different patterns. They were all soldiers of jinn, soldiers of humans, soldiers of birds, all in display right there, in a complete display, organized display. Everything is in place. No one can exit. It was a magnificent army that had never been displayed in this way. حتى إذا أتوا على واد النمل. This army comes in, and when they reached a whole colony of ants, one of the ants says, "Oh, ants, go inside your homes for Sulaiman, or else Sulaiman will crush you with his soldiers." And they will probably not sense it, and they can't even sense that there are ants underneath them. فَتَبَسَّمَ. Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam was capable of hearing the ant screaming and warning all the rest of the ants. Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam smiled and laughed from the words that he had heard the ant that from the words that he heard the ant saying. And he said, "O Lord Almighty, inspire me to thank the blessings that you had given me and my parents, and inspire me, that is, to do righteous, to act in righteousness, that you will be content over. And enter me." Enter me, it doesn't mean enter me. It actually means and embrace me with your mercy, and include me as one of the servants, your servants, that are the pious ones. In other words, your pious servants. So include me as part of your pious servants. وَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرُ. While he was getting and making this dhikr, while he was making this dua, what happened? He started tafaqqada. As any soldier, as any sergeant, as any leader, he has to go over all the different tasks, all the different soldiers that he's looking after and looking over. And he realized that the birds were missing someone. And he said, "Why don't I see the hudhud, the hoopoe bird? Why do I not see him?" Or was he absent? In other words, he chose to be absent. I will punish him, a severe punishment, or I will probably slaughter him, or unless he comes to me with a clear and a manifest reason. But here he called it Sultan al-Mubin. Sultan is any power. It could be a power of report. It could be a power of any type of a report, but this report is actually supposed to be a good enough reason to go against the order of a prophet, the order of a prophet that everyone within the army must be present on that day. So, فَمَكَثَ غَيْرَ بَعِيدٍ. It wasn't. Waited for him to come, and it wasn't long. And the bird comes. Remember, when Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam actually said right there, he said that utina, and right there, well, let's go back to the ayat, where he actually said, wa utina min kulli shay. When he said utina min kulli shay, now it was a bird that wanted to, I guess, show Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam that no matter how expansive your ilm is, a bird may have an information that you don't have, So Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, when he actually said that, he didn't realize, or I guess Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to teach us that, no matter how expansive your ilm is, فَمَكَثَ غَيْرَ بَعِيدٍ. Wasn't long when the bird, the hoopoe bird, comes and says, أَحَطُّ بِمَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ. What? A bird tells a prophet, I was capable of seeing what you were not able to find. With all the investigation abilities, you've got the jinn, you've got the human beings, you've got the birds, you've got all these different armies and soldiers, but I was able to find something you were not able to cover. An investigation that was different. What was this bird's investigation supposed to be all about? This bird, it's amazing. This bird was actually doing a certain investigation. This bird knew that he had a mission. And what was all this army for Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam? It wasn't an army to gather money. It wasn't an army to instill an authority. It was an army in order to instill the principle of the Lord Almighty. And which is why this bird, as a soldier, knew that following the mission of the Lord Almighty was beyond any other mission. This bird comes and says, I was able to get the information that you were not able to get. وَجِئْتُكَ مِنْ سَبَإٍ بِنَبَإٍ يَقِينٍ. and I came with an information from the land of Saba, an information that is clear and manifest, and there's no doubt about it. In other words, this bird wanted to make sure that before he brings any type of information, that there's no doubt and there is no mistake in that information, because he knows that Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam will not take any information without, or any report without making sure that this report contains all the truth and nothing but the truth. But here, the hudhud, the hoopoe bird, knew that he either has important information, sultan and mubin, or he will definitely be held accountable with the severest accountability. He will be tortured, or he will even be slaughtered. Let's continue and see what information this bird has to say. Inni wajadtu imra'atan tamlikuhum. He said, I came and saw a woman that was ruling them. Tamlikuhum. She wasn't just ruling them, but this woman is actually controlling them. This woman was a queen, and she wasn't just a typical queen. She was utiyat min kulli shay. She was a woman that was granted all the power. Utiyat min kulli shay. She was granted military power. She was granted financial, economical power. She was granted religious power. She was granted all the power that any king would have. وَلَهَا عَرْشٌ عَظِيمٌ. And she has this great, magnificent throne. This queen was not like any other queen. وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا. Well, he wanted to say, this woman has power. In other words, this woman, if you are talking about an army, I'm just telling you that this woman is not any other woman, like any random woman, but this woman controls a whole massive area. She's got the political, geographical, military, economical, and religious power. It wasn't like any other person. وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا. I found her and her people prostrating to the sun. They're worshiping the sun. وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم. Look at this one. And the shaitan had beautified their actions. Why did he say زَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم? Remember in the previous ayat, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same surah, let's go back to that. In the same surah, how it clarified a number of times that زَيَّنَّا لَهُمْ أَعْمَالَهُم. There's a narrative, there's media, there's a way of putting things, and that is the basis of people going astray. So there's the misguidance, there's the guidance, of course, if it has gone wrong, there's the misguidance, and the misguidance leads to people giving a narrative to their action. And even when it came to Fir'aun actually beautified the wronghood by actually making ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا, but they beautified it and made it seem as if it was actually the right thing. And here, the same exact thing, that the hudhud recognized the pattern. It wasn't, well, remember, Musa alayhi salam was before, historically speaking, was way before Prophet Sulaiman, right? Was way before Prophet Sulaiman. So let's see, what happened? Where was it? Yeah, وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم. So what happened? Now here comes the basis of Aqidah. He said, well, they're prostrating to the sun. And in terms of action and justice, they're actually زَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم. Shaitan had beautified their actions. He made them think that what they're doing is actually making sense. He made them think that what they're doing is somehow containing truth. And what happened is that زين لهم الشيطان أعمالهم. Shaitan made them see what is wrong as good. Shaitan made them put a narrative to actually make it seem as if it was the right thing to do. فَصَدَّهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ. And he got them away from the right path. In other words, he led them astray. And فَصَدَّهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ فَهُمْ لَا يَهْتَدُونَ. And that's why they were not capable of finding guidance. Why weren't they capable of finding guidance? Well, they're not capable of finding guidance simply because their actions can lead to misguidance. So what does that mean? Do we start with aqeedah first, or can an action, a behavior actually lead to aqeedah going wrong? It can be both, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about Prophet Lut alayhi salam, that their behavior was actually taking them into a wrong aqeedah. They were so blinded, no matter how often and no matter how much you talk to them into making guidance, they were not even capable of seeing it. They were not capable of seeing haqq because of their actions blinding them. So here, فَهُمْ لَا يَهْتَدُونَ. فَهُمْ لَا يَهْتَدُونَ. They were not capable of seeing haqq because of the wronghood that they're actually committing. أَلَّا يَسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ. What is this? The bird. This hoopoe bird is basically so angry. أَلَّا يَسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ. Why would they not prostrate to the Lord Almighty, who actually brings al-khaba', who actually brings the things that are hidden, brings them, whether in the skies or on earth, brings them to be apparent. And he would know, that is the Lord Almighty, what people conceal and what people announce. Allah Almighty, there is no Lord and no one to be worshipped but Him. He is the Lord of the magnificent throne. قال سننظر. Prophet Sulaiman here says, قال سننظر. He didn't take his words, even though he said that he could come to him with بنبأ يقين. He said, I could come to you with clear words. There's no way that you can actually find any doubt in it. So what does Prophet Sulaiman say? We're going to see and look over your claims, and we're going to see whether you are right, whether you were honest in what you had claimed, or whether you were amongst the liars. اذهب بكتابي هذا. Take this report, this document, and throw it at them. And then leave them. فانظر ماذا يرجعون. We're going to see what they're going to come back to with this note. With this note, we're going to see how the response to this note is going to look like. The queen opens up the note, and of course, she says, "Oh people, I was thrown a note, and this note seems like a very good note. This note is actually a note of honor." This woman, it's really strange that this is a queen, and you could see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had praised her her words, even even revealed how smart, intelligent, and how what is the word that I could use? She was indeed a woman of great governance. And what does she say? إنه من سليمان. It is from Sulaiman, and it starts with بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The note starts with, in the name of Allah Almighty, the most merciful, the most beneficent. The note only has one message. ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. That's it. End of the note. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألا تعلوا علي وأتوني مسلمين. Do not go beyond my power, and you come to me submitting to the Lord Almighty. What is that? That's a threat. That is, in international politics, this is nothing but waging a war on someone. That's exactly what it is. It's waging a war. قالت. What did she respond? Is it her feminine side that, how did she respond to a battle? But they knew that she was powerful. So let's see what she said. قالت يا أيها الملأ. What does she say? She goes to the people and the government officials, that is right there, government officials, and she says, أفتوني في أمري. أفتوني means tell me your thoughts on this matter, in or on my matter, on my governance, that is. ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدون. Was that, ما كنت قاطعة أمرا. She said, I will not make any rule or I will not make any decision until you witness and until you support me in this decision. So this is the queen. Wait a minute. This is a queen, and this queen was described from the Hudhud that she had all the power. But this queen, is this necessarily proving that she was really strong? Or is this necessarily proving that she was of great governance? Because clearly this woman, she was not a dictator. And she said, I'm not going to make any decision until you support me with it. Or is it that because she's a woman, she lacks the aql? And what aql is, it basically means the power, the authority, the what is the word? Al-aql is that, like when you affirm something, the firmness. Did she lack the firmness? Regardless of how we might perceive this queen, let's continue the story, and we'll see what you think of this quote. The scholars actually had differences of opinions on how they understood this quote. By the way, some of them said it reveals that she, as a woman, was not firm, and even though she's a magnificent queen and she had all the power, but she was not firm. Other scholars said that it was revealing her hikmah, it was revealing her wisdom. And part of wisdom is that you don't let your people perceive you as a dictator, so you could get their support from you. Differences of opinions on how they saw this. It's really strange how you could see it as wisdom, and really strange how you could actually see it as firmness, and really two are, or lacking firmness, and two are different and opposing views on how you could see it. We can probably hear your thoughts on it later. قالوا إنما نحن أولو قوة. What did they respond? They said, we're people. They noticed that she said here, she said, أفتوني في أمري. She said, tell me your thoughts on my matter. On my matter. She didn't say our matter. She said my matter. And here they said نحن. Here they responded, we are people of power, and we are people of lots of mighty ba's. Mighty ba's is like saying military power. We've got all the ability to defend ourselves, and etc. وَالْأَمْرُ إِلَيْكِ. And it's, you see what you want to do. وَالْأَمْرُ إِلَيْكِ. The matter is to you. You can rule what you think is right. فَانْظُرِي بِمَاذَا تَأْمُرِينَ. And you tell us what order you give us. Notice how they responded. قَالُوا نَحْنُ أُولُو قُوَّةٍ. They responded, we're people of power. Why did they respond, we're people of power? Did they respond, we're people of power, because they felt that she somehow lacked the feeling of power? She somehow got afraid. Is that why they responded نحن أولو قوة? Or did they respond نحن أولو قوة, we're people of power, because they just wanted to show support? All right. Did they want to show support, or did they want to remind her not to be afraid? Again, it depends on how you read it. All right. قالت إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها. Her response, when kings rule, when they enter any qarya, village, city, any geographical area, when they enter it, when they rule, أفسدوها, they make destruction, why it's like one ruler and makes one decision. And they would make those that are honorable, they would turn them into the most humiliated people. And that's how most of them would rule. Said, وَكَذَلِكَ يَفْعَلُونَ. And most people are like that. Now, again, scholars had differences of opinions. Was she here trying to show that, was she here trying to show that she was not wanting to be, a dictator, and is saying, I'm not like that, and I don't want to, rule in where make those that are dishonorable, make them honorable, and the people that are honorable, make them humiliated? Or did she want to just say, well, you know what, you guys tell me what you want, because I'm not really sure on what I want to rule on this? Again, is it wisdom or is it fear? All right. Now, again, you can have differences of interpretations, because even scholars had differences of interpretations on how they want to view this queen. وَإِنِّي مُرْسِلَةٌ إِلَيْهِمْ. Well, she decided to make a final decision. إِنِّي مُرْسِلَةٌ إِلَيْهِمْ. I'm going to send them a gift. فَنَاظِرَةٌ بِمَا يَرْجِعُ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. And I'm going to see, when I would send them this gift, I want to see whether they're going to respond in a way where probably, forget about us and I'll just give them money. If they're after interests, I'll bribe them with money. And that way I'll probably protect my kingdom. Let's see if bribery works. Let's see if they're after interests, we'll probably use our power. If they're not after interests, let's see what they're really wanting. Let's see what they're after. All right, so let's see, what did they do? Well, she said, let's send them money. Let's see if we can bribe them with money and see what they're going to do about it and how they're going to react. فلما جاء سليمان قال أتمدونني بمال. When the gift came to Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam says, are you sending me with more money? What the Lord Almighty had given me is better than what you were given. You're the ones that are just so happy and so excited about your gift. In other words, about the wealth that you have. This will not whatsoever turn us away. That is, but it's not going to turn us away from the mission that we're after. Irji' ilayhim. Go back to them. And we're going, فَلْنَأْتِيَنَّهُمْ irji' ilayhim فَلْنَأْتِيَنَّهُم. It's like, go back to them. And irji' ilayhim means give the gift back to them. And we're going to come to them with soldiers and an army that they will not be able to overcome. And we will get them out of their city humiliated and وهم صاغرون, and belittled. قال يا أيها الملأ أيكم يأتيني بعرشها. He was not only telling them, that is telling the queen, that we're going to come with an army, but he was already ready to be in actual implementation. So he said, he talks to the mala. Al-mala here, government officials, those in military, those in government officials. أيكم يأتيني بعرشها. Now he's got the jinn right there, who's going to be capable of bringing me her throne before they would even come submitting to me. Muslimin here, before they would even come and submit to us. قال عفريت من الجن. Now عفريت is usually a word where it contains somebody that is not always doing what they're supposed to be doing. In other words, it's a marid min al-jinn. He's a person that is, what is the word that I could use? A marid min al-jinn. He's a person, power, known to go beyond limits. Let's say it that way. Min al-jinn. This jinn is mighty. This jinn, ifrit. And that's why he said here, laqawiyun amin. He wanted to assure that, I'm a ifrit min al-jinn. I've got my abilities, or sometimes I go off the limit, but I'm going to be strong and I'm going to be Amin. I'm going to be trustworthy. I'm not going to go off the limit. I'm going to be trustworthy. And I'm going to be strong. So what did he say? One of the jinn says, I'll bring you her throne before you even get up from your throne. In other words, before you even stand up. وَإِنِّي عَلَيْهِ لَقَوِيٌّ أَمِينٌ. And I am strong and amin. So like, don't worry, I'm not going to take it anywhere else. قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب. So this one is different than Ifrit. The Ifrit, had those moments. He's a Ifrit. Ifrit is usually married min al-jinn, is usually as a habit of getting off the limit. But the one that had ilm min al-kitab, he had hidayah, he had ilm min al-kitab, he had some ilm from the guidance or book. He said, I will bring it to you before you even blink. فَلَمَّا رَآهُ مُسْتَقِرًّا عِنْدَهُ. Right away, he saw the queen's throne right in front of him. قَالَ هَذَا مِنْ فَضْلِ رَبِّي. He said, this is from the blessing of my Lord Almighty. In order to test me, will I be thankful or will I turn away or at least not be thankful? The word kafara doesn't mean to get away from Islam. The word kafar means to deny the gratitude. وَمَنْ شَكَرَ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. And whoever is thankful, then they're actually thankful for themselves. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ رَبِّي غَنِيٌّ كَرِيمٌ. And whoever turns away from the Lord Almighty, then the Lord Almighty is not in need for them, and He is most kareem, He is most generous. قَالَ نَكِّرُوا لَهَا عَرْشَهَا. He wanted to test her intelligence. So he said, نَكِّرُوا. The arsh, her throne, make it unidentifiable for her. Change it. ننظر أتهتدي أم تكون من الذين لا يهتدون. We're going to see whether she's going to be guided. In other words, whether she's got her intelligence. Is she a smart woman? Or is she a woman of that her people are just putting him in a position that she's not that intelligent and be fit for or not? فلما جاءت, when she came, she was told, is that your throne? Remember, they had already نكروا لها عرشها. They had already, changed it, and they really made it unidentifiable somehow. They told her, is this your throne? She said, as if it is it. She was able to recognize that some of it is really there. She knew that they had done something to the throne. She was smart. She knew that some of it has changed, but she didn't want to admit that it was actually it. She just said, as if it is it. This woman, subhanAllah, this woman is just, I don't know what to say, but you could see this woman is a woman of izzah. She didn't even want to admit, she was, as if it is it. She didn't even want to admit that it was it. Even though, yes, they changed it, but they changed some of the things in it. She didn't want to, as if it's it. It's like, yeah, perhaps. وَأُوتِينَا الْعِلْمَ مِنْ قَبْلِهَا وَكُنَّا مُسْلِمِينَ. And of course, it was that ilm and وَكُنَّا مُسْلِمِينَ. Of course, وَصَدَّهَا مَا كَانَتْ تَعْبُدُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ. What happened? And of course, Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam made it clear to her what she was worshiping away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. صَدَّهَا. It's like, told her, you gotta get off that. That is not acceptable. You cannot do such a thing. And clarified it, of course, what she was worshiping away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, put the foundation of any authority. لا إله إلا الله. إنها كانت من قوم كافرين. She was actually from the people that were deniers of the Lord Almighty. Then she was told, قيل لها ادخلي الصرح. She was told, enter the fortress. فلما رأته حسبته لجة. When she saw the fortress, she actually thought it was water, a wave. وكشفت عن ساقيها. She wanted to enter the fortress, But the fortress was so magnificent, it was actually made of glass. She thought that the fortress was actually water. So she lifted her skirt and wanted to not get wet. So she was told it's actually a fortress, smooth fortress made of glass. And then she said, Rabbi inni zalamtu nafsi. She knew that the Lord Almighty had given Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam ilm, and of course he had clarified to her La ilaha illallah. He clarified to her the foundation of justice, the foundation of any authority. And then she admitted, Inni zalamtu nafsi. I had oppressed myself. وَأَسْلَمْتُ مَعَ سُلَيْمَانَ. And I had submitted with Sulaiman. She didn't say to Sulaiman. She said with Sulaiman. She still wants to maintain her kingdom, wants to maintain her position. I became Muslim with Sulaiman. Lillahi Rabbil Alameen. Submitting, both of us are submitting to the Lord Almighty, the Lord of the worlds. This queen is just amazing. This queen is just amazing. All right. So I have to end right there because I actually have another meeting to go to. So we'll see you all, inshallah. It's just a story of Malikat Saba. Malikat Saba. It's amazing. You know, there's more in Surah Saba. So inshallah, we'll talk about it some other time. Assalamu alaikum.